Gravity Falls, a show of humor, mystery, and casual viewing. Unless you're me. My name is Christian. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Dipper Pines and about to rewatch the entire series. Rest assured, there's a perfectly logical explanation.
All right, now we move on to Into the Bunker. Another great episode, and it pretty much continues right where the last episode ended, with Dipper still trying to find out more about the mysteries of the town. And at the end of the last episode, he was looking through the journals and saw an image of one of the trees in the forest with a blacklight image of a secret tunnel going down, revealing some kind of secret bunker. So that's kind of like the premise of this episode is Dipper, Mabel, Wendy, and Seuss trying to find the secret bunker and find out more about the secrets of the town. We start off the episode with Dipper at Wendy's house watching a movie called Nearly Almost Dead But Not Quite. And then Wendy receives a text from Robbie, and then Dipper learns that Robbie still hasn't gotten over his breakup with Wendy, even though Wendy's already moved on. And then Dipper asks Wendy if she's still dating anybody, but then she jokes around and says that she's dating a stuffed walrus, and then he attempts to admit his feelings for her by showing her a love letter that he'd written, but then he decides to back out of it and instead invites her to a mystery hunt with Mabel, which Wendy accepts, but then Dipper becomes bummed because he couldn't admit his feelings. We then cut to a scene of Gurglestan supervising the reconstruction of the mystery shack and wondering where the rest of the family is. We then cut to Dipper, Mabel, Seuss, and Wendy as they gather around the spot where Dipper first found journal number 3. So they go to the tree, they find the secret passageway that kind of leads into the secret bunker. The first room is kind of like a bomb shelter where there's like a bunch of food that's stacked up the next like several decades to prepare for this kind of apocalyptic event. And behind one of the posters is like another secret passageway which leads to like this kind of like room with a bunch of like cubes and everything, and the cubes kind of start to kind of close in on the characters, and then Dipper looks through the journal and sees that there's like a bunch of different symbols that they have to press in order to unlock another passageway which leads them to the secret laboratory. And then there's kind of like a subplot that's going on of Dipper kind of get over his crush with Wendy. You know, he's kind of writing the secret love letter to her, and then Mabel finds out about the letter and then tries to get Dipper to admit his feelings to Wendy, but Dipper being resistant because, you know, he's Dipper. And, you know, once they get to one of the rooms, the characters actually get separated, and Dipper and Wendy end up in a room locked with some kind of creature. And Mabel says, like, the only way I'm going to let you guys free is if Dipper tells Wendy that thing he's been wanting to tell her. And then, you know, Wendy's like, come on, just tell me what you need to say. And then Dipper's like, no, we're going to find another way out. So he'd rather die than admit his feelings to Wendy. So then, you know, they kind of go to another room. The monster gets defeated by, you know, some kind of mysterious person, and they figure that this person could be the author, and he admits that he's the author. So he kind of like gives them kind of like this vague information about the author and like the secret laboratory and the creatures and everything. But then Wendy realizes that this person has the same image as the person on this can of beans that they find from the bomb shelter, and realizes that this person isn't who they say they are. And then this person reveals himself to actually be a shapeshifter and, you know, tries to attack the main characters and everything. A huge inspiration was The Thing, you know, by John Carpenter, that is one of Alex Hirsch's favorite movies. So then, you know, Mabel and Seuss realize that there's a monster. They try to save Dipper and Wendy. They kind of unleash this water. It kind of like floods into the room, hits the monster, but also kind of like drowns Wendy. Once the water sinks down, you know, Wendy's kind of like laying there, kind of unconscious, and then Dipper goes over to her, kind of rushes over to her, tries to, you know, admit his feelings for her and everything like that. And then another Wendy comes from behind him. They realize that, okay, one of them's a shapeshifter, and Dipper has to kind of choose, okay, which one he has to like attack. And one of them kind of gives him a wink, you know, something that he wants to see, and then one of them gives him the zip the lips and throw away the key. He realizes that that's the real Wendy, kind of takes the axe that Wendy brought along on the journey and like plants it into the shapeshifter's chest, changes back into the shapeshifter, chase him around the tunnels. They come into the laboratory section where there's a bunch of like cryogenic tubes. You know, they eventually push the shapeshifter into one of the tubes and like seal him in there, and the shapeshifter kind of goes through all these different forms to try to escape. And then one of them is actually a form of Dipper, and the shapeshifter kind of taunts Dipper and saying like, this is the last form you'll take. And he kind of does this move like, which is kind of like a hint of a future episode where that may or may not happen. So I think that was a cool Easter egg that they planted in this episode. But then they eventually escape the laboratory. And then we also have the resolution of Dipper and Wendy, where Wendy finally hears Dipper admitting his feelings for her, but, you know, she's totally cool with it, even though she realizes that they can only be friends because of the age difference. And, you know, she kind of lets him down easy, which I really appreciate, that they can still be friends without there being any awkwardness or tension. Then they can finally kind of move on, because, you know, Alex Hirsch was saying that a lot of the episodes have to deal with like Dipper's obsession with Wendy. So he decided to just kind of wrap up that storyline just so they can move forward with like the main storyline in the series. So they decided to just kind of like wrap that up. So I think they did that in a really good way, in a good like realistic way to help them still be friends moving forward without having there be any awkwardness. Seuss finds a briefcase that was in the laboratory. It also has a label that says property of F, which is a little hint to the first name of the person who owns it. it and opens it up and realizes that it's a laptop, which is kind of like busted up. And Seuss says that he could fix it up in a few days. And Dipper kind of realizes that this could be their next clue to find out who the real author is and, find out more about the mysteries of the town. We also get several cryptograms. During the end credits of the episode, there's a cryptogram in the Key Visionaire cipher. And after you use the keyword shifter that's found on the barrel of the bunker, it translates to what kind of disaster indeed. Also in the journal on the author's hiding spot page, there's a binary code that translates to put all 6 pieces together. And this is a reference to the 6-page pieces that need to be put together to make the Blind Eye Society image in Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained. Also in the Cryogenic Tube section of journal number 3, there's another cipher that translates to am I me? Is he me? And on the following pages, there's another code that translates to ice ice baby. Also in the page section that's revealed at the end of the episode, there are 2 sequences of numbers. And after you put them through all the ciphers, it translates to improper use of machinery could lead to utter catastrophe. Overall, yeah, another great episode. A really kind of terrifying episode. This is probably the most frightening episode. A lot of disturbing images of the monsters and everything like that. So yeah, definitely a darker season kind of moving forward. But yeah, I really like the stakes that this season is kind of stacking the characters up against and kind of showing the different dangers that they're going to be facing, as the series goes on. So yeah, definitely appreciate that for sure.